Um, I'm Doug Crandall with Advancing Employment. Let me try that again. Welcome, everybody. See what I get, Shirley, and for giving you a hard time.
Good afternoon.
My just desserts. Well, welcome, everybody. I am here at home, the home office, and we have 2 Zooms going on. So I'm using a cell phone. But Joseph is in Athens, and I'm also joined by Dr. Rackensberger, Amy Price, as well from Advancing Employment. And this is our 3rd week, which is unbelievable, right? NDAM and our celebrations with our partners. You can see the banner behind Joseph that lists all those partners. We've decided this is Job Seekers Week. So a lot of our messaging and reposting and amplifying will be around job seekers. To that point, Joseph and I and Amy Price will be heading to Statesboro. And Thursday we'll be helping 3 gentlemen have their cases open with vocational rehabilitation. No better way to celebrate Job Seeker Week than that, so we're excited. Even though I'm limited on this technology, the good thing is you're not here to listen to me. We are joined today by Tricia Jones-Parkin. Tricia is a colleague and just a leader. I could list to you all the things she's done, and I'm going to do a little bit of that. But the bigger part with Tricia is she's the real deal. Tricia doesn't do webinars on topics that she doesn't actively do. And so that is really refreshing in sometimes a field where you can be listening to something and think, I'm not sure this person even has a friend with a disability. So Tricia is an advocate. She is deeply steeped in disability rights and civil rights. She works at the university in Utah and does and leads the Customized Employment Project there. She wrote, if all of you remember this, back in 2016, the projects of national significance at the Administration on Community Living, what are known as the PI grants, the Partnership in Employment, while she was at the state DD agency. Very rare, very, very rare. And she led that as the principal investigator. She won the Dave Hammis Award from APSI in Innovation, which is it's an apt award for Tricia. But she has agreed to spend some time with us today to talk about not only what she's learned in the PI piece, the Partnerships in Employment, but what she's doing. She's also running a transition project in Rhode Island as well with some families and some special educators there. So please, as always, sit back, relax, try to turn off those devices. We will be monitoring chat for questions, and feel free to put anything in there and we'll make sure Tricia gets to it. Tricia, welcome, and let's all just either clap so she can hear you welcoming her or do one of the emojis. So welcome, Tricia. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much. Make sure I'm not muted. I'm really good at thinking I'm talking when I'm not, so, or vice versa. So thank you, Doug, for that kind introduction. And I'm really pleased to be here and talk with you all about the work that we have been doing. And I did write the grant when I was at the Developmental Disability Agency. I worked there for 20 years. And I remember, the multiple trips that I spent with Doug doing work in this project and other projects that we worked on. And I'm saying, I don't know how you're doing it. And I did kind of reach that point. And then I moved over to the USAID, the university, and was able to take the PI grant with me for the duration of the project. And we have one more year. We were able to do a no cost extension. And so that's where we're at currently. But I do have a lot of support with this project. We have an incredible consortium of partners that meet monthly, regularly, all of the time. And then Kelly Hess, who I'll talk about regularly, and then also in some of the resources, you'll see runs the day-to-day management of this project and is just an incredible leader, and for time issues, she was not able to join me to present today, but just a brilliant speaker. So I'm so glad you guys are looking at the screen and starting to fill this out. I think it's always so helpful if you can know who your audience is. The thing about this project is that while we have really focused on the school being the hub and the transition specialists being the team leads, it really can be anyone who has an active interest and is willing to take the lead to lead a coalition of people and really understand those roles and responsibilities. So if you'll take a minute and go to menti.com and use this code, you can do it on your phone or your computer. I have a couple of questions that I'm going to introduce throughout the presentation to hopefully keep you engaged. And they're kind of fun because you can kind of see them pop up. And with word clouds, right, that the word that there are several people or that most people kind of put in tend to get bigger. So if we have a lot of employment specialists or a lot of ER counselors or people that are focusing on transition, it helps me know who is out there listening. So yeah, this is great. So we won't spend a ton of time on that, but I'm going to go ahead and move into the PowerPoint as you keep adding these roles and responsibilities. So if you're a parent, I think I made it so you could select two if you're both, right? If you're a parent and working in the provider field, or you know, any of those, you know, if you had some shared roles, that's great. Okay, great. So we have we have employment specialists, we have folks that are focusing on transition. That's wonderful. Great. Okay, we'll keep it coming. And I'm going to go ahead and shift to the PowerPoint and we'll get started. Let me just make this bigger. Is that large enough for everyone to see? Sometimes when I put it in presentation mode, I feel like it takes everything away that I can see. So this has kind of been my solution for getting everything to work and me feel comfortable. So as long as it's large enough for everyone, this is the way I'm gonna. So if you can give me some thumbs up that'll be great. Okay. Well, that's my contact information. And Doug talked a little bit about the background of the PI grant. And, you know, they have not, they did do another round. It's not called PI, it's something else. And they've awarded some states or organizations to do some additional kind of partnership or community planning work. Some people are calling it PI 2.0. But in 2016, Utah was one of 6 states that got funding to focus on cross-system, cross-agency collaboration. And, you know, Utah, we started with a demonstration project. We had done some background work with resources from ODEP and the Employment for State Leadership Mentoring Program around transition. And so we had some foundational pieces already in place that we built upon, and we kind of hit the ground running with these pilots, with these demonstration projects. And so that's really where we put our focus and energy. And through that work, we uncovered some system issues and things. And I'm going to share with you some of those things. While we had some really great outcomes, part of also right with grants and demonstration projects is that you uncover things that are not working so well and barriers. And so I want to talk about some of those and things that have been able to improve in our state and that we're still actively working on improving as a result of these demonstration projects. So I love this research citation. I know that everybody has seen it, but it's such a powerful statistic that one of the strongest predictors of post-school employment success for young adults, and this is right, brilliant, Eric Carter out of Tennessee, the Vanderbilt, you know, that people having, students having paid jobs during high school is one of the strongest predictors. Yet it seems like one of the hardest things that is we can accomplish, especially for students with most significant disabilities. And even the numbers for students that are don't have as many barriers in terms of getting employment while they're in school, it's not as much of a priority. When we started doing the initial research, I was surprised at how few students work and go to school versus, as I was growing up, certainly the expectations I had for my daughter when she turned 16 and even younger was, you get a job, you work part-time, you work in the summers, you need to learn to balance those things. So just understanding that there is some evidence behind that, and there's certainly other predictors, but I think it's just really important that we use this element as a framework for our demonstration projects. We also wanted to help people understand that, especially because we were working with folks that had the most significant disabilities where nobody had any employment expectations, that we also needed to think about what other kind of supports they needed in addition to employment. So was it supports to get to work? Was it living supports? Was it social and recreational kinds of things? What kind of things did their family need? And so as the project grew, we also started understanding we need to pull in independent living centers. We didn't do that in the beginning. So there were some pieces that we learned along the way that we were missing in some of those introductory and those first few years of the pilot site. So I want to talk a little bit about some of our data, just to get that out of the way. Over the 5 years of the project, and certainly COVID has impacted the number of students that have been able to get employed significantly. We were making had some pretty good momentum, and it came to a screeching halt, as a lot of people did, especially with schools not meeting, and that was our hub. It was pretty tough, and we had people that lost some of their employment. But since the beginning of the project, we've had 84 students that we've connected with. Not all students have chose to continue participating. Some felt like, I don't really necessarily need customized, I just want to get a job, or they maybe went to college or did some other kinds of things. But we connected with 84 students across these pilot sites. And so 45 students have gained competitive employment that we've connected with and tracked, and all the way through the process. And 20 students, and I'm going to talk more about these temporary paid work experiences that we set up through WIOA. I'm going to talk more about those later. Most of those led to long-term employment, some did not. But now we have about 1 in 13 students that are active. So that means they're still either working towards employment, or they're just getting started, or they maybe graduated, but we're still kind of following them in the adult service system and tracking them with this coalition of people supporting them. And then each team has between 7 and 19 team members, and I'll talk about who makes that up. So that's kind of what our initial goals were, and then kind of where we are cumulatively at 5 years, and now we're going into 6 as a no-cost extension. So I want to talk about why we chose to focus on discovery and customized employment as our primary strategy. So when I worked at the Developmental Disability Agency, I was really instrumental, and I focused a lot on employment first. And as we continued to see, and work with providers on the adult developmental disability side, we just kept seeing, these the day service numbers rise and rise and rise, and the supported employment numbers were just creeping. And we couldn't really understand, why aren't we making any of these shifts? And as we started looking at some of our transition programs in our state, we realized that a lot of them were kind of set up similar to what day services looked like. Some had some work experiences built in, some didn't. Some were very kind of recreational or kind of based, but more kind of classroom. It really just depended across the state. But what we really started talking about was if we start helping people get employment before they come in to the adult system, maybe we can start making some inroads and changing some of those expectations of what people want, right? Learning what the brilliant work that Rich Luking was doing and just all of the transition kinds of initiatives that were happening across the country. We weren't really focusing on that as much for people with significant disabilities. What we were also seeing is that in planning meetings with support coordinators and other team members, people were planning to go to day services and saying this person is unable to work. And so we knew that we needed to really focus on strategies that change that narrative and help people understand that there were different ways to be able to think about employment. And so what we did is we trained and worked with everyone to understand the principles and values of discovery, including transition educators, VR counselors, WIOA youth counselors, paraeducators, support coordinators, and of course, employment specialists. So while not everybody was actively doing the work of discovery, we wanted them to understand the principles and what happens when you take people out of these sort of fixed environments or these set jobs that you have set up for them and what can be uncovered. And while we were working with a very small subset of their larger transition program, we didn't care. We knew we weren't going for big numbers or, large swaths of people becoming employed. We really wanted to help the schools identify people who they did not have expectations of employment for, and really help them dig deep and think about what that could look like. And so we knew that customized was a way to do that. We had been doing some demonstration projects through our employment first initiatives through customized, and started seeing some shifting happening in our provider system, and knew that we could make an impact in the education system. We also had some great leadership in our State Board of Education that was willing and able and wanted to see some change. So you work with the best of the best with Doug in terms of the power of discovery, but these are some of the things that we really tried to help people understand why discovery was so important and valuable, and how it really revealed the person at their best and what it's about, and that it wasn't just about seeing them at school. It was about understanding what their life at home looked like, what their family support system looked like, what their roles at home looked like, who they connected with at home. And we learned so much. And of course, educators learned so much. And then we also started helping them understand, we're not expecting you to do all of this on your own, right? There's a partnership here, and started facilitating what that looked like and helping providers work with educators and learn all of the great things about the students while they're in the classroom. So there was just so much to be learned in all of these different environments that students were spending time in. We know that discovery doesn't conclude whether somebody can work or not. We know that it really helps us know how to move forward and what to do in terms of employment success, or certainly give us a better idea. And when we added those supported internships or temporary work experiences as part of discovery, we saw some really great things happen for people, and some real mind shifts, or really, culture shifts happen within schools and systems and organizations. It really helped people understand that we don't necessarily need to assess or evaluate everyone. And that was a pretty tough shift, or that discovery could be an alternative to that. And so we really spent some time helping people understand what discovery is intended for, what other IEP assessments are for, and helping them marry the two so that it didn't seem like something else that they had to do, but something that they could use to inform a student's IEP and their transition experience. Doug, I hope, and Joseph, I hope you'll help me. I'm not spending time in the chat, so if you will help me kind of monitor those and, let me know if there's questions or anything that we need to spend time on. I'm happy to do that and take a pause at any point.
We are on it, Tricia. We have
Thank you.
some just comments, but other email questions, and we'll save the email questions till the end. But if anyone wants to put comments or feedback or questions for Tricia in the chat, we'll take those as well. Thank you, Tricia.
So some of the things that we asked ourselves as we were developing these teams, and we helped all of these partners think, as they were coming to the table, was whose responsibility is it? And can any of us do it alone? What are we preparing working age youth for? These were all kinds of questions that we were trying to uncover, and certainly we didn't love, right? Some of the answers that we were seeing in some of the various situations across the state, and certainly what people were reporting to us as their experiences, and those expectations, and how we really had some work to do there, and still do, and how do we kind of help everybody understand what those roles are, and how to work better together, right? I mean, we worked really hard at getting educators and VR counselors and other agency partners together, but there were a lot of educators that didn't know the provider system other than, oh, this person I think lives in a supported living situation or has a group home, or they get services, or they're on the waiting list. But other than that, they really didn't have a lot of interface. There certainly was not a lot of interaction about how to connect with the provider, or certainly having expectations or interacting with them and working on common goals together around employment and exiting and being prepared for what's next. And so we really had in those early teams to build those relationships and help people understand those roles and responsibilities, and still need some of that support, right, with people shifting in and out, as it does happen with turnover and those sorts of things. And even still, even within some of these sites that we spent so much time in, we still have pockets where students are not being considered for employment, whether it's, significant health issues, or, just some, just places that were, some things that we've just not been able to kind of work through, that we're still kind of working on, and reminding them, this is great and you're doing really great here, but we also need to think about these students that are not getting those opportunities, and continue to dig a little deeper. So I'd like to take a minute and go back to the Mentee survey real quick, and just I'd love to just get a sense of who is kind of where you're at with your experience of working with transition age youth or with a transition program. So this is just a quick one where you can select. Good. And that can be whether you're working through pre-ets, or you have transition age youth that you serve in your agency, or you're just starting to connect with schools. Good. Good. It's nice to have a base, or, even having lots of experience. I'm hoping that wherever you are on the spectrum, that there would be some pieces that you can pull and take back to the work that you're doing at some point. Maybe it's not right now if you're at capacity like so many people are right now, it seems. Anyway. This is such, okay, there we go. Thank you for taking the time to fill that out. We'll go back and look at that again. So these are kind of the partners, and I tried to make these titles as generic as possible, right? Every state has different titles for folks. So transition educators, so those are the folks that are in the schools working in either post-high programs, so 18 to 22. We did have some sites where we were working with high school students because the transition programs were so small. We had some rural schools where we were working with students that were 16, 17, even 14, and starting to do some introductory discovery to then inform their transition process. But mostly we targeted students that were in that 18 to 22 post-high program that were eligible for DD waiver services. And then employment specialist providers, so CRPs. I don't know if that's a term that you use in Georgia, community rehabilitation providers, vocational rehabilitation counselors, WIOA youth counselors. So these are the counselors that are focused on, they're typically within the workforce system and accessing or primarily focusing on the WIOA youth dollars that have to do with internships, or it's a different pot of money and structure that you can couple with somebody who's getting VR services. And I'll talk about how we did that and the success that we were able to have with that. Case managers or support coordinators that were connected to the DD system. I will openly say that was our weakest link and still is in terms of getting them involved quick enough and understanding their role in the larger team. And I still am not sure why we struggled so much with that. We're still kind of trying to understand that piece. And then the Independent Living Center was a group and an organization that we brought in later as we started really uncovering how many students were not connected to the wonderful services and opportunities and things that were happening within the independent living centers in their local communities before they were exiting school, and how that can be such a great hub or place to continue to connect and learn once they leave school. So the next thing I'm going to do is really kind of talk about how we get started, and then we're going to go into some roles and responsibilities. So you create this coalition, and it can be at a local level. So right, you've got a local school, so a single school within a district or an area, and then we had this larger kind of state representation that oversaw these local sites and gave them support at the state level. So if they were having issues with local implementation or a supervisor or getting things done, the state folks were able to intervene or kind of support them through some of those issues. So we had the state support level, and then we had the local level. And that really helped in terms of those local level people knowing that they had this state level support that they could go to in addition to their local supervisors and directors. So then the goal was, right, for the students, whether it was high school or post-high, to exit with paid work experience, long-term employment, and having those necessary supports in place so that they were connected to the agencies, not just getting referrals or knowing who to go to, but they were connected and had supports in place and had their day kind of mapped out before they left school. It was tough. We didn't get it done for every single student, but the ones that we were able to really connect and make those pieces worked, it really made a strong impact. And we saw reduction in the amount of time they spent in segregated settings in terms of their expectations of community engagement, and employment continued to go up even after they were in adult services. So you start with identifying some students and building a team, right? So you kind of need to know who you're serving, who is, are people connected to some of these services. You want to start small. It might be 1 to 3 students. It might be 2. And you say, who is this person who are these students connected to? Do they have long-term services or do they need them? And how are they using them? What resources do they have? It helps if they have a few years before they're exiting, especially in those early years as you're getting things going, because it takes some time to get some of those eligibility pieces in places and get things going. We did support students that were in their last year of school. We were just always really careful to say, we're going to get you connected. We're going to do as much as we can. You look at this room and there's this whole team of people, committed to making sure that meet monthly. And so families and students know that there is work being done, but we're not making any promises that a job and all the other supports that you need are going to be in place by the end of that school year, because it's really, really tough. It happened on a few occasions when all of the stars aligned and everybody did their parts, but it was the exception to the rule in terms of that 1 year to exit student. So I do recommend trying to identify students that have a couple years left. Identifying a team lead. We really focused on the educator being the team lead because of there not really being any conflict. We used multiple providers in every team site. We wanted students and families to have choice of providers. And so we felt like the educator was the person that they knew, and the educator could then link them to and help them, make those decisions. But if you're a provider or a counselor or somebody in an area that just wants to get things going, you can take the lead and identify, students in an area and just say, hey, I really want to get this going. I know that if we work together, we can make great things happen, and then start building from there. It really can be anyone who is committed and then can help other people understand their roles. And as it grows and maybe you add other providers in, then maybe that's where you maybe start finding a more neutral team lead or somebody who doesn't necessarily have, right, that payment is involved or something like that. But for us, because we had all of this facilitated support, that's where we started. But it really can be anyone who's willing. There were a couple times where we had team leads or educators that couldn't take on those responsibilities, and they needed to step out. And so we had the VR counselor that was connected to that team take over as team lead for a little while. Or we had a really strong WIOA youth counselor that felt like she could take on some of those responsibilities for a little while with some support. So it really is just anybody who's willing and committed to the process. We hold meetings on a regular basis as a team to review the progress. Where's everybody at? Did somebody get their application in? Have they met with the provider yet? Is this, have they done their discovery activities yet? There are checks and balances all along the way. And maybe it's the family that's not following through, or maybe family needs more support and somebody's got to step in, or we need to find some additional supports to make things happen. So having that monthly engagement really kind of helped things not get stalled. There were other things that got in the way, and I'm going to talk about some of those, but that monthly connection held everybody accountable. We developed timelines and orientation nights. So we helped everybody understand this is what to expect. We're going to start discovery at this time. We should be done with that part of it by this time and start with the process. Did it go that smoothly every time? Absolutely not. But we wanted people to know what to expect so that if it didn't happen, they could let us know and we could talk about it, and we could as a team come together and figure out where were the roadblocks, what were the things that were getting in the way. And then obviously being clear about roles, responsibilities, and expectations. And I'm going to talk more about what each of those people, each of those members of the team have done. Let me know if I'm just like overwhelming too much. I'm trying to cram as much in, and then I have some resources for you that you can go to later. That is a whole toolkit of how-tos, resources you can download, forms, everything to get you started if this is something that you want to take on. So what we also really started understanding, we did applications. We had people apply to be in this project. Educators or the local education authority had to really let us know why they wanted to be in it and what was their commitment level. And we thought we asked all the right questions, and we did, but there were some other pieces that we didn't necessarily understand until we got further in. Understanding some of that when we meant all, we meant everybody, and that wasn't necessarily the understanding of that local education authority. And so we had to kind of go back and do some foundational pieces that I would say kind of slowed some of our work a little bit and inhibited, I would say, the belief or maybe some of the strength of the team initially. And we weren't expecting that, because when people put in this application and they said, we're prepared, we're doing all these things, from our lens, we thought we were on the same page. And it wasn't until we got into the school and really started understanding, some of the other pieces that we had some additional kinds of things we had to work through. So really kind of laying that foundation that everyone can contribute, recognizing the value of collaboration, that you are doing more. Initially, you're doing more work, and then you understand that when everybody comes together, all of the work that you're doing actually goes somewhere. I can't tell you the number of times, and I'm sure many of you are shaking your heads, yes, that educators or professionals or many, many people would say, I've sat down with people so many times and given them the application or told them about the service and they never did it. And they spent tons of time doing that and it didn't ever happen. Yet in this model, we didn't really let that happen. We made sure people got connected. It took a little bit more time initially, but then it actually went somewhere. There were results, there were outcomes connected to the work and the collaboration. We had to help people understand that employment doesn't happen right away. And when a student has had zero work experiences or expectation for employment, it isn't necessarily fair or easy for a new employment specialist or anybody to be able to figure out employment in, a month or 2 months, when somebody has spent zero time exploring that or having any expectation of employment. We had to really kind of help people understand that nobody had a magic bullet or a bank of jobs that were, available for everyone in this project, that were just, waiting and ready. We had some things we had to kind of work through in terms of what students were being prepared for, and then what providers could do in the limited time and the timeframes that we had set up with this project, and knowing sometimes that we were going to have to go beyond that. Really valuing language and how it affects others. We really struggled sometimes in team meetings as people got really comfortable with one another. We would hear things that would, just like anybody else, you're like, I don't feel comfortable with you saying things like that, or if that person was sitting here, if that student was sitting here, I would be heartbroken, and so we kind of have to go back to some of those values and respectful language. And it certainly was never meant with ill intent, but it was those reminders of, you can't have these kinds of conversations and then go out and have conversations with employers and people in the community and speak the other way. And Doug does a beautiful way of talking about, right, that valued story and really representing people in the best light, and that you have to do it always. And so, those are some of the things that we really had to set the ground rules for and remind people of and hold each other accountable with. And that got uncomfortable sometimes. We also had to recognize that every student would have a different process and path. Not everybody needed to go through an internship. Not everybody needed, all of the different pieces. That we had some fundamental elements, but just like anything else, when you start doing a project, people think that that's the way for everyone. And we had to kind of go back and say, if somebody's offering someone a job, we don't need to tell them, no, they have to do an internship first. We had some of those kind of things happening. And again, unintended consequences or things that we didn't anticipate that we just kind of had to work through. So as we really focused on linking students to services, we really kind of tried to make sure that any member of the team who had a strong relationship might take that lead. For example, we had a student that had, she was close to the educator, she was close to the employment specialist. For whatever reason, the mother really connected with the WIOA youth counselor and responded to her the best. And so anytime we really needed something, or the parent of the student to engage, we asked Melissa, the WIOA youth counselor, to reach out to her. And immediately, it happened. It wasn't even necessarily always her role, but in that particular situation, we said, Melissa, I don't know what you're doing or how you do it, but this mom really, really responds well to you. And that's how it worked. And so it really just kind of depended on, so we had this larger team, but then we also had a team that developed in different nuances around each student, right? In terms of what their needs were and the services that they had. And so we wanted to make sure that they were connected to developmental disability services if they needed it, connected with VR, connected with workforce. Not every student went through an internship, but they still connected to workforce because there were other kinds of incentives and things that they could access that weren't even necessarily just the internship that was really valuable. And then the independent living center piece. And then we had all of our students go through the benefits planning to make sure they understood the impact of work on their benefits. And then of course, the student earned income exclusion piece. So now I'm going to get into roles and responsibilities real quick. Check my time. So in our project, we had the transition educators really kind of identifying students. We put in place agreements, right, so that we could do data shares, all of those kinds of things. DSPD is our DD agency. We coordinated parent information sessions with the educators. We helped the educator provided that IEP to make sure any sort of eligibility for VR or the WIOA youth program was in place. So they were just that anything that was needed in terms of eligibility in the school, they provided. We had educators prepare a positive personal profile to share with the employment specialist, just to get them an introductory to know the student before they started doing discovery. And we had the students be involved in that. That was a really powerful thing that we started doing. It helped raise expectations, not only of educators and paras, but of the students and the families themselves, as they were putting together this information that was positive to share with the providers. It was really helpful. And then they led the team meetings. We did build in some stipends to help offset their time if it was on non-contract. The VR counselor, they did the application and the eligibility process. In our state, they were the ones that initially funded the discovery process. We also had them do some supported internship or coaching. So if DWS, the WIOA dollars paid for the internship and the wages, we would use VR dollars for the temporary work experience to cover job coaching so that it could be a supported internship. What we found was that was the reason students weren't accessing the internships through WIOA, is that they needed some coaching, and that wasn't something that WIOA could set up within that particular program. So by braiding these resources, we were able to help students access the WIOA youth dollars, access the temporary work experience dollars through VR, and then, but it was all guided by the discovery process. So I'll show some examples in a minute. And then obviously other resources and things like that. I'm going to start hurrying up so I can make sure I have some time for the examples and things. WIOA youth counselors. If you have not connected with WIOA youth counselors in your state, I really suggest you check it out. It was a little difficult to get started. The first WIOA youth counselor I worked with, when we initially introduced this project, she contacted me after the meeting and she said, I have never worked with a student that had more than a 504 plan. I've never met a student that had Down syndrome. I've never met a student with a significant disability. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to support them. I don't know how to talk to this student. She was completely open and honest with me about all of her fears and how she was going to fail at this. And I appreciated so much her vulnerability in saying, I don't know how to be successful. And all I needed to do was just help her through it and help her understand that the student isn't any different. We just have to kind of navigate through the TABE test and all of their stuff with a little bit more support. And what we were able to do because of this project, we were able to get the TABE test waived for students that had more complex disabilities and had gone through discovery. If they did not want to go through the TABE test, some students liked it for whatever reason. I don't know why or how. They enjoyed the TABE test. They enjoyed making, getting better scores or whatever. But we did, our local DWS, the state level, waived the TABE test for students who were in post-high and needed a supported internship. So we were really excited about that systems change happening as a result of this project. And I can tell you our WIOA youth counselors have been one of our strongest champions and partners at the local level and the state level. Just very, very proud of this work and partnership. So state DD agency, again, I mentioned this has been a challenge for us in our project, but we really needed them at the table if perhaps the VR dollars were not enough. If somebody needed one-to-one to support during the whole internship, we would need to pull in DD dollars because the VR temporary work experience wasn't enough. And so we would need to braid those resources as well. And we were able to do it because we had a good state level representative that was able to work and help us do that. But it was that local person was critical and sometimes harder to access. And certainly when they transitioned out of school and accessing other supports, we really needed them to understand this person already has a job. These are the other supports they're interested in, and really be involved in that customized employment planning meeting to identify all the supports they were going to need as they exited school. Providers, critical to this process. They were the ones doing all the direct work. They're going in, they're doing the home visit, they're working with the transition educator, they're completing the discovery staging record and sharing it with the team and getting input. They're going to the school and participating in activities there and observing at the school. They are coordinating with the team when they're developing potential jobs. They were coordinating with a WIOA youth counselor for supported internships. They really had to step up their level of collaboration and partnership and communication with so many different partners. And it was a lot of work. And we did provide stipends to providers to participate in these meetings and use grant funds for that. We're looking for some other ways to sustain those resources now. We've not been able to kind of capture that non-billable kind of service in terms of the sustainable part of the project, but we know how valuable it is in terms of their time and commitment. So obviously families, right? We want to make sure that they're informed. We need to know where their capacity is in terms of what they're able to provide, what they understand. We supported families where English was their second language. We supported students where, they were here, they were born here, but their parents were not citizens. And so we had to work through some of those challenges. And that was a learning experience. We had students that were in an intermediate care facility. And we just had a lot of different situations come up that we learned so much about and recognized places where significant barriers were created that had nothing to do with the student's desire to work or ability to work, but just those systemic kinds of things really got in the way. And families either could strengthen those efforts, or we had to really support families to be able to get through them. Students, it was really helpful for people to understand that they can access and that they don't have to be in school all of the time up until they're 22, that they can start working part-time and start transitioning and get away from that 9 to 3 kind of day in life. And the more they do it, the better, because then it's not so abrupt. But that was a really tough, and it is still a really tough thing to do with families and parents and students because of the way that's been structured for so long. But really trying to help people have those community-based work experiences and earlier, more often in the summer, after school, whenever. I want to talk about some of our lessons learned. Not enough providers. That definitely impacted our ability to serve more students. We had all of our sites wanted to enroll more students in the project. The goal was that every student in their post-high would be able to go through this model and not necessarily even need customized, but just to have this collaborative level of, I need, supported job-based training, or I just need a little bit of help getting a job. But it was all of this coordinated effort. But because we could not really sustain even the students that we had that had significant disabilities, we struggled with getting that up because of the provider capacity issue. Our payment structure was part of that problem. Obviously COVID, the settings rule, and the extra demands that providers also had in terms of who they were already serving, I think impacted their ability to feel like they could take on more students and prioritize. These are all, things that we heard from providers as we begged, pleaded, wanted them to engage and they told us why. The disconnect between paper and practice, as we all know, people get excited and they go through training and then they go in and they start and then they kind of go back to some of their old ways. So we would start out with the home visit and then we'd end up finding people applying for jobs or doing some things that were not customized. And then some variations in expectations, just some of those pieces that we really had to kind of really work on through the entire project. And I think that's just always a thing, is that ongoing technical assistance that is always needed in terms of the project, and then organizationally, and just, we all need those things as we're learning. The partners and moving parts, and as people move in and out of teams, keeping them up to speed and helping them learn their roles, and whose job is it to do that, and identifying who's going to make sure that this new person on the team understands how things work, and making sure that they feel included, and that they're part of the team. Families, really kind of changing. We still had some, people were excited until we'd get right up to that employment part, and then they would freak out a little bit. Or, I talked about some of the lack of support or resources or options that we had for people that were not citizens, or English was their second language, and we didn't have providers or even, staff that could communicate with them well. Our cultural competence pieces were really lacking. And so those are pieces that we're trying to work on now and understand how we can improve that. The schools, they struggled with some of their space and staffing and parent involvement and turnover and things. I did want to just talk about, even with the challenges that we had, here are just a couple quick quotes from people or employment specialists or educators that said, in spite of all of the challenges or things, this is what we really valued in the project. Students are getting connected with community partners that will stay with them. We're so proud of our students seeing pride in themselves through job exploration. Was working as a collaborative team, that they really started understanding employment first and understanding what other people needed to do, and that maybe they needed to do more and not expect so much of the adult service system as well. So I just wanted to share a couple quick examples. This is Kyle. Kyle's one of the students that was in our project who went through the discovery process and did it. He actually went through an internship, worked at, what is the golf place where you hit the ball and there's cocktails and I'm drawing a blank. Anyway, it's this big giant mega thing. And he really into sports, very active, likes to be moving. So it was a really good fit for him. He really struggled with kind of being independent a little bit at first. But as he got to know coworkers and they got to know him, that support increased. So the picture on the right is him sorting and organizing the clubs. But his favorite thing was when there was some downtime where he would go out and Top Golf, that's the name of it. My brain's just a little slow sometimes. He would go out and get some of the balls. They have like big machines that he would get. If he got a ball, he got to hit a ball. And that was his favorite thing. In addition to getting a paycheck and hanging out with people and, just being in that fun environment, was that he found a ball, he got to hit it. And so I wanted to share a picture of that. I know we're coming
Tricia.
up on. Yes.
Tricia, it's Doug. Yeah, we're right at it.
Okay.
But here's what we usually do. I think I shared with you, this group is informal and dedicated. And Tricia, you've been getting lots of love in the chat. And this is very much like when we had the two moms on from Rhode Island around self-employment. I think people want to keep talking. So for those of you who need to jump off, we're going to stay on another 10 minutes at least to see another example and maybe get a question or two in. Although, Tricia, you've covered most of the questions that have been emailed. So please go ahead, Tricia, and we will end then at 10 after.
Okay, let me just show you before, just if people have to jump off really quickly, and I'll make sure these links are sent to you, and they are in the PowerPoint as well. But in our on our website, we have we've created this toolkit, and really it's all the things that I've talked about in a toolkit that's on the CEIutah.com. So you can go through and scroll. Why do we need a team? Building a strong foundation. and there's different things that you can click on. And it will take you to, I'm going to just scroll really fast and hope I don't make anybody sick. At the top right, there's all these different little tabs: who, what, how. And then our Padlet that we've created has all of the resources that are connected to who, what, how. So we have samples of release of information and enrollment forms. We have an example of positive personal profiles that educators have completed to give to providers. We have tips for how to run a successful meeting. We made some one-pagers of pre-employment transition services, assistive technology, all sorts of resources that are connected to each one of these who, what, how to get started, regardless of what your role is. So you can go and check this out anytime and download any of it. And then Georgia-ize it, whatever you want to do with it.
we may not want to do that. I think Dr. Brady's also put the link in chat. Maybe Joseph has too, Tricia.
Okay. So a little bit, I mean, it's just more of the detail of what we talked about, but it really just makes it, we really put a lot of thought into, and we did it at the end of the project because we wanted to make sure all of the things that we learned, we were able to kind of share with folks that might want to do this at some point.
Well, I mean, Tricia, that's the whole idea, right, of a demonstration grant is you're trying to improve a specific system. So there are two questions here, Tricia, and
Okay.
I don't know who these come from. There are actually 5, but I think we've covered 3. But one is, and Amy Price, who's also on, does a great job of this too. But the question is, how do you explain discovery to families under the project? How I know you're a very functional person and try to really watch the lingo, but do you want to try to offer up some tips on that?
Yeah, I think we stumbled through it at first and we probably made it weird. And then we got better at it and just said, really what we want to do is we want to get to know this person in different environments. We want to talk to you. We want to, and I can tell you, we had home visits that were not very helpful and we didn't learn a lot. And the employment specialists learned so much from the school and the teachers, and discovery would have not been very rich without that experience that they got at the school. Because the family they really struggled with how to contribute or what they saw their child being able to do. And even through the point of this young man getting a job at the rec center as a youth coordinator, up until he still is working, and his mother will say he'll get bored, he'll quit. He's not going to do it. But she just, and I don't know if she just wants him to be your baby boy forever. I'm not really sure what it is, but she's still convinced it's not going to work out. And he loves he is doing so well. And, all things sports, all things entertainment. He's the guy that's got all the little one-liners like, oh, please, just that engaging, endearing. I mean, you just want to spend time with this guy. And he's working at a rec center, helping with all of the youth programs. He loves WWE. He's just he's a character, and it could not be a better place for him. And he's doing great. And he's doing so.
Tricia, this has to do with, and Vicky, I think it was Vicky. Yes, every state has WIOA youth counselors, and I'm sensing we're going to bring Tricia back maybe in the spring of 2022 just to talk about that, because she's touched on it, but her work around engaging general workforce, whether you call that American Job Centers or the WIOA youth counselors, it is really unique and very strong. And I think such a defining moment of what you do here. But maybe this is the good question to end on. And it's from a parent. Tips for parents of youth 12 to 16 years old. I often hear about work early, work often, and work-based learning. So what are some tips, I guess, for parents ages 12 to 16, and maybe Tricia on that whole idea of, work-based experiences and any tips?
I think as I've spent time in people's homes, and Doug, you've been with me too, where families or parents will apologize because we'll ask about, does so-and-so do chores? No, I don't make them do anything. It's just easier to do as myself. I would say that's probably the number one thing that if we could support parents to, number one, not feeling so guilty of it being easier to do it yourself, right? That's everybody's story. I'm guilty of it myself with my husband, quite honestly. But just that, somebody making their own toast, somebody, taking out the garbage, just I think some of those, or recognizing some of those tasks that even if they're 1 or 2 steps are something. And helping people maybe identify some of those things, because I don't think people see how those translate. So maybe helping people see what that might look like earlier, and maybe not. I don't know if I'm making myself clear, but maybe being more supportive about how we help people do that without making it be overwhelming. Because I always just hear people apologize for, no, they don't clean the whole house by themselves.
Thank you, Tricia.
Yeah.
As you can see, this is a great group, and they've stayed on over their time. And you've got.
I'm so sorry. I never plan these things well, and I go off on tangents.
You did a great job, and you got so much great response in the chat. And as
I
Joseph
have one
has
more
said, he'll
Menti
send
meter
out
if you will bear with me. I know I'm ridiculous.
I guess we're not getting.
Sorry, one more.
All right, Tricia, it's all you.
Okay, so fill this one out. Whoever's left. After the session, I am interested in developing or starting, getting involved, strengthening, finding out what's happening, talking with somebody in my organization about it, not sure, anything to have to do with collaborative transition. Cool. I was not expecting that. I was gonna make something like, nope, this is lame. I'm not doing it. It's way too much work.
I'm just impressed with the Mentimeter. It's the first time we've had anyone do it, Tricia, and you did a great job with it.
It's Tricia proof. If I can figure it out, anybody can.
All right. Thank you so much, Tricia.
Thank you.
We will certainly have you back. And let's give Tricia a round of applause. Thank you.
Anytime.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Celebrate hard this week. Job Seekers National Disability Employment Awareness Month. Go to the Advancing Employment website. Thank you again, Tricia, and everyone else. Thank you. Bye-bye.